Parker Preston crouched in the grass, tying his son's shoelaces for the third time with fingers stiff from working a double shift at the auto shop. "All right, buddy," he said, brushing the dirt off little Oliver's knee. "Go show those kids what you've got." Oliver, all of 6 years old with a mop of curly brown hair and a gap-toothed grin, gave him a thumbs up and ran toward the goalposts, his oversized jersey flapping behind him. The sun was already dipping low, casting a golden hue over the community park. Parker leaned back on his elbows, exhaling slowly. It had been another long day. Rent was due in 2 weeks. His car made a rattling sound that screamed expensive repair, and the last time he'd taken a full day off. He couldn't remember, but watching Oliver laugh as he kicked the ball with the other kids made it all feel worth it at least for a minute. "Is he yours?" a voice said beside him. Parker turned his head, squinting against the sun. A woman stood a few feet away, her long dark hair pulled into a low ponytail, wearing jeans, sneakers, and a white tee that somehow looked too crisp for a park. She was holding a smoothie in one hand and sunglasses in the other, looking completely out of place and yet somehow not. "Yeah," he said, sitting up straighter. "Oliver. He's got a good kick," she said, her lips tugging into a small smile. "I'm Layla. My niece is out there somewhere, probably eating dirt instead of playing." Parker chuckled. "Parker. Nice to meet you." They sat in silence for a beat, watching the kids chase the soccer ball like it was a golden ticket. Layla crossed her legs and looked over at him again. "So you coach?" "No, just a struggling dad who brings his kid here after work." She tilted her head. "Struggling," he shrugged. "Single dad, long hours, bills, you know the story." Layla's throat tightened, but she kept her gaze forward. "Yeah, I get it." Of course, Parker had no clue that the woman sitting next to him wasn't just an aunt in jeans. Layla Anderson was the CEO of Arcadia Tech, a multi-million-dollar tech firm downtown. But after the week, she'd had firing a senior executive, getting hit with a board vote on expansion, and canceling her 5th date in 2 months. She needed air. Her sister had begged her to help with her niece this weekend, and for once Layla had said yes. "I like this park," she said. "It's real, no pretense." Parker laughed under his breath. "That's one way to say a little ragged around the edges," she smiled. "No, I mean it." "It's nice." He studied her for a second. There was something about her voice warm, steady. She didn't look like someone who lived around here. No designer labels, but everything she wore looked quality. Her eyes followed the field like she was really paying attention, not just killing time. Oliver came running back, cheeks flushed, panting. "Dad, did you see my goal?" Parker reached out and clapped his son on the back. "Of course I did, you little superstar." Layla grinned at Oliver. "Nice footwork out there." Oliver looked at her, then back at his dad. "Is she your friend?" Parker opened his mouth to answer, but Layla beat him to it. "I'm Layla. Maybe we can all be friends." Oliver nodded, satisfied, then bolted back to the field. Parker shook his head with a smile. "You handled that well," he said. "I have a lot of board meetings," she replied, deadpan. "They're surprisingly similar to 6-year-olds. He laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. They stayed until the sun sank behind the trees. The kids were winding down, and Parker brushed off his jeans as he stood. "All right, Oliver, time to go." Layla stood too, adjusting her bag. "I'm here again tomorrow, same niece, same time. You guys coming back?" Parker hesitated. Probably if I can get out of the shop early," she nodded. "Good. I'd like that." And then she turned, walking toward a sleek black car parked along the side, definitely not a car you'd expect in this neighborhood. Parker watched her for a second too long. "Dad," Oliver said, tugging on his hand. "Can I have a snack?" Parker blinked. "Yeah, sure. Let's go." That night, after Oliver was asleep, Parker sat at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of bills. But instead of the usual dread, his mind wandered back to the woman with the warm eyes and the confident voice. Layla, she was probably married, or dating someone, or just being nice. Still, something about her stuck with him. The next afternoon, Parker rushed from the shop, his hands still stained with grease, and barely made it to the park in time. Oliver ran ahead and Parker scanned the field. Then he saw her. Layla was sitting on the same bench, this time with a coffee cup in hand and a pair of sunglasses resting on her head. She caught his eye and smiled wide. "You made it," she said. "Wouldn't miss it," he replied, out of breath. She patted the bench beside her. "Sit." I brought you something, he blinked. You did, she handed him a paper bag. Inside was a turkey sandwich and a bottle of water. I figured you probably didn't eat, she said. You looked dead on your feet yesterday. Parker stared at the sandwich, then at her. You didn't have to, I know, she said softly, but I wanted to. He took a bite and suddenly he realized how hungry he really was. This is amazing, he said, mouth full. She laughed. It's just a sandwich. No, he said honestly, it's not. They sat there again, watching the kids. This time closer, more comfortable. So, he said eventually, what do you do when you're not at the park? Layla paused for half a second, then answered with a shrug. I work in tech, management, he nodded, not pressing. Sounds important. Sometimes more than I want it to be, he looked at her. You don't like it? I do, she said. But lately, I've been wondering if it's everything. Parker didn't quite understand what she meant, but he nodded anyway. Yeah, I get that. The sun dipped again. Oliver ran back with a scraped knee, and Layla pulled out a small bandage from her bag like she'd been prepared for it all along. You're good at this, Parker said, watching her. She smiled. I've had practice. He felt something shift then, not just attraction, not just curiosity. Something warmer. They walked to their cars together this time, sharing stories about their childhoods, laughing at dumb things their kids had said. And for the first time in a long time, Parker felt something he hadn't let himself feel in years. Hope. As they reached their cars, Layla paused. So, tomorrow, Parker smiled. Wouldn't miss it. As she drove away in that sleek black car, Parker finally noticed the license plate. ARC 1A. He frowned. That sounded familiar. But then Oliver tugged his hand again and the thought vanished like smoke. He didn't know who Layla really was yet. But he was already starting to fall for her. The third afternoon in a row, Parker was late. Not by much, maybe 10 minutes, but enough to arrive with his shirt sticking to his back, a fine layer of dust still clinging to his jeans, and grease that wouldn't quite come off under his nails. He barely had time to catch his breath before he saw her. Layla was already seated on the far side of the field, legs crossed, a canvas tote at her feet. She looked different today. Still casual, but her hair was down, and a pair of delicate silver earrings caught the light when she turned her head. She had a sketch pad open on her lap, pencil moving in slow, deliberate strokes. Parker hesitated, watching her from a distance. He hadn't expected to see her again after yesterday. Something about her kept pulling him back, even when he knew better. Oliver was already on the field, chasing after the ball with the rest of the kids. Parker made his way to the bench, wiping his hands on a rag he kept in his back pocket. I swear I'm not stalking you, he said, dropping down beside her. Layla looked up, and her expression lit with something quiet but unmistakable. Good, she said. Because I brought snacks, he laughed, softer this time. You're starting to make me look bad. She reached into the tote and handed him a small container of cut fruit and a napkin. Then consider this your redemption arc. He accepted it with a grateful nod, popping a grape into his mouth. Are you always this? Prepared? She closed the sketch pad and slid it back into the bag. Only when I'm avoiding emails. You could have fooled me, he said. I figured you were writing poetry about clouds or something. Sketching the trees, actually, she said, then added with a grin, and maybe a kid or two. He glanced at the kids. You're an artist. No, she said quickly. I just like drawing, I'm not. Good. You don't strike me as someone who half-asses anything. She tilted her head. That's the first time anyone's accused me of being a perfectionist in the park. I call it like I see it. She studied him for a beat. So tell me something, Parker. Why cars? He blinked. Why what? You said you work at a shop, she said. So why cars? What made you pick that? He leaned back, gaze drifting toward the sky. I didn't really. My uncle owned the shop when I was a kid. I used to hang around, hand him tools. Eventually started fixing things myself. After high school, it was either that or delivering pizza. I liked the sound of engines better. So you stayed. I stayed, he said, voice lower now. Then things changed, life got complicated. Layla didn't press. Instead, she glanced toward the field. Oliver doesn't seem to mind. He's the reason I keep going, Parker said. I'd give up everything else in a second if it meant he didn't have to worry. She nodded slowly, then looked over at him. He's lucky to have you. He didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't used to compliments that didn't feel forced or obligatory. So instead, he asked, what about you? What made you pick? Management, her eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something unreadable passing over them. That's a long story. I've got time. She hesitated, then said, My dad ran his own company. I grew up around conference calls and spreadsheets instead of bedtime stories. He wanted me to take over one day. I didn't think I would, but then he got sick. Parker looked over, surprised. I'm sorry, she gave a small nod. Thanks, it's been a few years now. Anyway, I stepped up, learned fast, made decisions, did what I had to. Sounds like you had to grow up early. I did, she said, but I don't regret it. I just wish I knew what it was like to make a choice without 15 people waiting for me to mess up. That hit him harder than he expected. I know that pressure, Parker said. Different kind, maybe, but same weight. Layla turned to face him fully. You ever feel like you're living a life that wasn't exactly the one you planned for? He gave a half laugh. Every single day. The whistle blew on the field, signaling a break. Oliver sprinted toward them, cheeks flushed, hair sticking up in all directions. Dad. I scored again. Parker held up a hand. Nice. You want water? Layla handed him a bottle before he could reach for his own bag. Oliver took it with a grin, then plopped down on the grass to cool off. Layla, Oliver said between gulps. Can you come watch me next time I play with the big kids? Only if you promise to win, she said. I always win, he said confidently. Parker chuckled. That's new. Oliver leaned back on his elbows and looked up at the sky, clearly content. Layla glanced down at him, her expression softening. He's fearless. Yeah, Parker said. That's what scares me. She looked at him again, this time longer. You're not like most people I know. What does that mean? You're not pretending, she said. You're not performing. I don't have time to be anything but what I am, she nodded, thoughtful. That's rare. Oliver jumped up again as the coach called for the kids to return, leaving them alone once more. Listen, Layla said, turning to him. I'm hosting a thing tomorrow night, not big. Just a dinner, a couple of friends, some food. You and Oliver should come, Parker blinked. You sure? We're not exactly, I'm sure, she said. It's in the city. I'll send you the address. You can bring a change of clothes for him. There'll be other kids, he hesitated. I don't really do. Fancy? It's not fancy, she said, a lie that didn't quite reach her eyes. Just come, he nodded slowly. All right, we'll be there. She smiled, then stood. Good, I'll see you tomorrow. As she walked toward her car, Parker watched her go, a strange knot twisting in his chest. He didn't know what he'd just agreed to, only that it felt like crossing a line he hadn't seen coming, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Layla was much more than she let on. Parker double-checked the GPS, then glanced in the rearview mirror at Oliver in the back seat, who was tugging at the buttons on his collared shirt like they were made of fire. Do I have to wear this? Oliver groaned. It's scratchy. It's just for tonight, Parker said, adjusting his own sleeves. We'll be out before you know it. The sedan he borrowed from his coworker wasn't in great shape. Its air conditioner puffed weakly, and one of the back windows didn't roll down, but it was clean, and it didn't rumble like his truck. He didn't want to show up to whatever this dinner was in something that sounded like it belonged at a demolition derby. The closer they got to the city, the more out of place Parker felt. The buildings grew taller, the sidewalks glossier. He turned down a side street lined with trees wrapped in white lights, and finally pulled up to a towering building with a valet already reaching for the door. Sir, the valet said, eyebrows raised at the visible scratches on the car's hood. Parker stepped out and opened the back door for Oliver before handing over the keys. Don't judge it too hard. She's got heart. Inside, the lobby was marble and glass, and something that smelled like lemon and money. A woman at the front desk gave them a once-over but smiled politely. Layla's guests, she asked. Elevator to the penthouse. Last floor. Parker pressed the button, trying not to stare at the mirrored walls. She said it wasn't fancy, he muttered under his breath. Oliver leaned close. Is this a castle? Feels like one. The elevator opened directly into a wide room with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the skyline. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers, and clusters of people stood around modern furniture with glasses of wine. A private chef was plating hors d'oeuvres in an open kitchen, and a woman in heels laughed in a language Parker didn't recognize. Parker felt his stomach tighten. Oliver edged behind his leg, and then he saw her. Layla stood near the balcony, talking to a man in a navy suit. She wasn't in jeans tonight. Her dress was black, simple but elegant, and her hair was swept back in a way that made her look like she belonged on a magazine cover. She turned, caught sight of them, and the change in her expression was immediate. She excused herself and walked over, her steps quick but composed. "You came," she said, voice bright. Parker nodded once. "We're probably underdressed." "No," she said, gently resting her hand on his arm. "You're perfect." Oliver stared at the chandelier overhead. "This place is huge." "Do you have a basketball court?" Layla laughed. "Better. I've got a rooftop garden with a swing." Oliver lit up. "Can I see it?" Layla crouched to his level. "Only if you promise not to jump off anything." "I promise." She called over a woman with a name badge clipped to her dress. "Angela, can you show Oliver the garden? There's juice and snacks out there." Angela smiled and held out her hand. "Come on, champ." Once they were gone, Parker exhaled. "Okay, I have to ask, what is this?" She hesitated, then gestured toward the balcony. "Walk with me." Outside, the city stretched in every direction. The lights looked like stars fallen to earth. Layla leaned on the railing, her voice lower now. "I wasn't sure when to tell you. I didn't want it to change how you saw me." Parker folded his arms, waiting. "I run Arcadia Tech," she said. "It's a software firm. We develop enterprise AI." He didn't say anything at first, just stared out at the skyline. "I figured you were doing all right," he said finally, "but I didn't expect this." "I didn't want to lead with it," she admitted. "Most people only see the money, or the company, or what they can get from it. And you thought I'd be the same." "No," she said. "I hoped you'd be different, and you are." He exhaled through his nose. "This is a hell of a way to find out." "I know," she said, "but I wasn't pretending." "Everything I said at the park, all of it was real." Parker looked at her then. "So what did you invite me here for? Just to see if I could blend in with the people who can afford a place like this?" "No," she said quickly. "I invited you because I wanted you to see my world. Because I want to be part of yours." He looked down at his worn shoes against the polished floor. "I fix engines with duct tape and borrowed tools. You close deals with people who fly in on jets." "I don't care about jets," she said. "I care about how you look at your son like he's the best thing that ever happened. I care that you remember the name of every kid at that park, that you showed up every day, even when you were exhausted. That you didn't ask me for anything." He was quiet for a long moment, wind brushing through his hair. "I don't know how to fit into this," he said. "You don't have to," she replied, stepping closer. "I don't want you to fit in. I want you to be exactly who you are." He met her eyes then, and something shifted. Inside, the music had changed. A soft piano melody filled the room. Layla extended her hand. "Dance with me," Parker blinked. "I haven't danced since high school." "Then it's about time." He hesitated, then took her hand. Her fingers were warm, her grip sure. They stepped inside, and she led him gently onto the open floor. People noticed, of course. Whispers passed between champagne glasses, but Layla didn't care. She moved slowly, guiding him through the steps, and Parker followed, stiff at first, then more relaxed. His hands found her waist. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder. "I still don't know what to make of you," he said, voice low. "You don't have to," she whispered. "Just don't walk away." He didn't answer, but he didn't let go either. From the far side of the room, Oliver appeared, holding a paper cup of juice and watching them with wide eyes. A moment later, he grinned and gave his dad a double thumbs up. Parker laughed under his breath. "Guess I'm being approved," Layla smiled against his chest. "Told you he's smart." As the song ended, they stood still for a beat longer than necessary. Then Parker leaned down just enough to whisper, "You scare the hell out of me." She met his eyes. "Good. That means we're getting somewhere." And somewhere, somehow, they were. The next morning, Parker woke to the sound of Oliver humming off key from the kitchen, a spoon clinking against a cereal bowl. The sun streamed through the curtains, casting a golden glow across the scuffed hardwood floors of their small apartment. Parker sat up slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. His mind was still tangled in the image of Layla's silhouette against the city skyline, her hand in his, her voice in his ear. He got up, padded barefoot to the kitchen, and leaned against the doorway. "You're up early," he said. Oliver turned, mouth full of cereal. "You danced." Parker raised an eyebrow. "I did, and you didn't fall." "That's debatable," Parker muttered, ruffling his son's hair. Oliver went back to his breakfast, and Parker stood there a moment longer, watching him. A familiar ache nudged at his ribs, the one that always came with wanting to give his son more than just enough. Last night had been a world away from their usual. And yet, for a few hours, it hadn't felt foreign. It had felt possible. Later that afternoon, as Oliver napped on their faded couch, Parker stepped outside to their narrow balcony and dialed the number Layla had scribbled on a business card tucked into his pocket last night. She answered after one ring. "You okay?" she said. "I think so," he replied. "That was a lot, I know. I'm not used to people like that or places like that. You handled it better than most executives I've met." He ran a hand through his hair. "I just wanted to make sure I didn't embarrass you." "You didn't," she said. "Actually, you reminded me why I started all this in the first place." Parker frowned. "You started your company?" "No, I mean why I kept going, why I didn't sell it when I could have 2 years ago. I thought maybe there was more to build, but I think I was just hoping someone might see me for more than what I've built." He didn't know what to say to that at first. He leaned against the railing. "You're not hard to see." She was quiet for a beat. "Are you busy tonight? I've got Oliver. He's still napping, but I promised him a movie night." "Mind if I bring pizza and join you both?" Parker blinked. "You want to come here?" "I don't care where it is," she said. "I just want to see you." He looked back into the apartment, at the crooked stack of DVDs, the blanket fort Oliver had half built and abandoned. "There's no skyline view here," he warned. "I'm not coming for the view." That evening, Layla stepped into Parker's apartment carrying 2 pizza boxes and a paper bag slung over one shoulder. She wore sneakers and a hoodie that looked impossibly good on her, considering it was probably the first time anyone had worn designer cashmere within these walls. Oliver, now fully awake and bouncing with energy, immediately ran to the door. "You came," he shouted. "I said I would," Layla said, kneeling to his height. "I brought extra cheese." They sat up on the living room floor, laying out paper plates and opening the boxes. Oliver insisted on watching a cartoon about a dragon who wanted to be a violinist. Parker sat back against the couch and Layla sat beside him, knees touching. Halfway through the movie, Oliver dozed off with a slice of crust still in his hand. Parker moved quietly to lift him onto the couch, tucking a blanket around him. When he returned, Layla was looking around the apartment. "Not judging, just taking it in. You have a photo of your mom on the shelf," she said softly. "She looks kind. She was. How long ago?" 5 years. Layla nodded. "You were close. She taught me everything that mattered, how to fix things, how to listen. How to make spaghetti with nothing but tomato paste and stubbornness." Layla smiled faintly. "You're a good man, Parker." He looked at her. "Why are you here?" "I'm not sure I can answer that without sounding dramatic. Try me. I've spent years building something that looks perfect on paper. But in the quiet moments, it all feels like glass, like I could touch the wrong thing and it would crack." She turned to face him fully. "And then I met you, and somehow you made everything feel solid, like I could stop pretending. Like there was something worth being real for." Parker stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes. "I don't know how to be the guy who fits into your world." "I don't want you to fit into it," she said. "I want to build a new one with you." He inhaled slowly. "I haven't let anyone in since Oliver's mom left." "You don't have to explain." "I do," he said. "Because what we're doing, it's not casual for me. I don't introduce Oliver to people unless I mean it." Layla's voice softened. "Neither do I." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You scare me, Layla. You already told me that. Still true." She reached over, took his hand, fingers lacing with his. "Then let's be scared together." They sat like that for a long while, the flicker of the TV dancing across their faces, the weight of something big and real settling between them. The next morning, Layla returned with coffee and pancakes. Oliver greeted her like it was the most natural thing in the world. She stayed through breakfast, through cartoons, through spilled syrup and mismatched plates. Parker watched her from the kitchen, a knot in his chest he couldn't quite name. Later that week, Layla invited them to her garden on the roof, not for a party, just them. There were string lights and sandwiches and a telescope she'd had delivered just for Oliver. He squealed when he saw Saturn's rings. Parker stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "You did all this for him?" "I did it for both of you." He looked at her, something fierce in his expression. I want to give you more than just a guy with a toolbox. You already have. That night, as they stood beneath the stars, Parker turned to her. I don't have millions. I don't have a clean past, but I've got a heart that's yours if you want it. Layla didn't hesitate. I want it. He kissed her then slow, sure, and without fear. A month later, Parker stood in a navy suit that Layla had picked out, holding Oliver's hand as they entered a quiet courthouse. Layla wore a soft smile and a simple dress, and the only guests were her sister, Oliver, and a man from the shop who owed Parker a favor. There was no orchestra, no gala, no magazine spread. Just vows, whispered between two people who had already promised everything in the quiet hours between soccer games and spilled juice, between city lights and old engine grease. Back at the apartment, Layla helped Oliver hang a hand-drawn sign above the doorway. It read, Home. And for all three of them, it finally was. 2 weeks after the courthouse wedding, Parker stepped into Arcadia Tech's headquarters for the first time, not as a visitor, not as a guest, but as Layla's husband. He took the elevator up to the executive floor, his tie slightly crooked, hair still damp from Oliver's enthusiastic attempt to style it like a rock star. A receptionist greeted him with a polite nod and gestured toward Layla's office. One of the walls was glass, and through it, he could see her standing by a whiteboard, sleeves rolled up, speaking to a small group of department heads. She moved with precision and calm authority, her voice steady as she pointed to projected data. Even now, she still surprised him. When the meeting broke and the room emptied, she turned, her eyes landing on him instantly. You're early. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I figured I'd see what kind of empire my wife runs when she's not bribing my kid with pancakes. Layla grinned and walked over. And you didn't mention there's a biometric scanner to get into your server room. I'm trying to keep things interesting. He leaned in and kissed her cheek. You do that without even trying. She reached behind her desk and pulled out a folder. Okay. Now that you're here, I need your signature. He raised an eyebrow. What am I signing? Our new nonprofit paperwork, the family foundation. You went through with it. You inspired it. She opened the folder to reveal the name at the top, the Preston Initiative. Scholarships, mentorship programs, and community upgrades in neighborhoods like yours. We're starting with the park. Parker stared at the page. You named it after me. I named it after us, she said. You reminded me that change starts with one person who refuses to give up. He picked up the pen slowly, then signed his name at the bottom. Guess I'm official now. You've been official since the first time you fixed my niece's shoelace with a hairpin. That weekend, they walked through the newly repaved soccer field at the park. The cracked benches had been replaced with shaded seating, the old rusted goalposts swapped for brand new ones. A banner flapped in the breeze. Grand opening, sponsored by the Preston Initiative. Oliver was running drills with 2 other kids, his grin half lost behind a missing front tooth. Parker watched him for a moment before turning to Layla. He's never going to believe all this started with a scraped knee and a shared sandwich. He doesn't have to, Layla said, looping her arm through his. He just needs to know he's loved. Later that night, after Oliver had been tucked in and the apartment was quiet, Parker and Layla stood on the balcony, city lights flickering beyond them. I've been thinking about something, Layla said, resting her chin on his shoulder. Do I need to take notes? No, but you might want to sit down for this. He turned to face her. That's serious, she nodded once. I want to step back, not all the way, but partially. Let the board handle more day-to-day, focus on the foundation on us. Parker blinked. You really mean that? I've built enough. Now I want to live it. He reached for her hand and kissed her knuckles. You sure about trading conference rooms for playgrounds? I'm sure about you. They sat down together, the quiet hum of the city surrounding them. You know, he said, tracing slow circles on the back of her hand, I used to think love like this wasn't made for people like me. And I used to think I had to settle for someone who looked good on paper. They leaned in at the same time, their kiss unhurried, deep, and full of everything they'd built together. Months passed, and the rhythm of their life settled into something new but steady. Mornings were filled with shared coffee, Oliver's laughter echoing through the apartment as he tried to beat Layla at board games over breakfast. Parker still worked part-time at the shop, more out of habit than necessity, and spent the rest of his time managing projects for the Foundation's community outreach arm. Layla held fewer meetings and spent more afternoons at schools, meeting kids who reminded her of what mattered. She traded her stilettos for sneakers more often than not, and somewhere along the way, she stopped checking her inbox after 5. One Saturday, they took Oliver to a cabin in the mountains. Just the three of them. No cell signal, no schedules. They roasted marshmallows over a fire pit, and Parker taught Oliver how to skip stones across the lake. Layla sat with a sketchpad in her lap, drawing the way the trees arched toward the water. That night, wrapped in a blanket beneath the stars, Layla rested her head on Parker's chest. "You ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't gone to the park that day?" "No," he said. "Because you did." She tilted her head up. "Still scared, only of how lucky I got," he replied. She kissed him again, slower this time. "I love you." "I know," he said, voice thick. "I love you too." Years later, the city skyline still glittered, and the soccer field still rang with the sound of children's laughter. The Foundation expanded, reaching cities beyond their own. Layla and Parker traveled together when they could, spoke at schools, and built programs that changed lives. But the heart of it all, their little apartment, the late-night movie marathons with Oliver, the way Parker still kept a toolbox under the kitchen sink, even though he could now afford a dozen new ones, never changed. Because love, once real, doesn't need to be extravagant to be extraordinary. And they never forgot that the most powerful thing they'd ever built was a family.